Nice to meet you.
My name is Allison.
Hi, Alison.
Hi, Julian.
I'm terrible at this because I'm sort of like twitchy and walky, so I've got to pretend I'm on a late night show or something instead of sit down here.
Well, we can stand up if you want. Would that be more comfortable?
Well, I just feel that maybe, yeah, then there's not a barrier between us. Let's pull a chair out.
Yeah. The only thing is we're being filmed, so I don't want to mess up the line of... Maybe we could kind of stand. Are you comfortable there?
Or here, please.
Or here. Yeah, I like standing too.
Great.
So
Right, the first 10 minutes of the discussion.
Just
But it's kind of like I don't know, it's like my business really. It's all about getting the camera ready. And,
yeah.
All right.
It's kind
Well,
of your job, so...
All right, hello, everybody. Now I've caused chaos.
I don't know if we need an introduction, but I'll start with a quick introduction just to get us through the gate. So most of you are familiar with Julian, I think, since you're here. But you've seen him everywhere and in so many things. You've been in over 50 feature films, I believe.
Yeah, that's old. Yeah, a lot. I do lots.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the highlights for me personally include Mimic, Cube, Hardcore Logo, The Witch, you were in Naked Lunch, Urban Legend, he was in George Romero's last film, Survival of the Dead, and then of course his TV work, which I think a lot of folks here are very familiar with, Supernatural,
Never heard
of course.
of it.
Supernatural. You're in Kingdom Hospital, Hannibal, American Gods, the list goes on and on and on. So we'll applaud again for and I guess my first question for you is that I see from your CV that you came over on this side of the pond when you were an adult, so I'm wondering what brought you to this side of the pond?
So in 1980, I was in a show, a theatre show. It was kind of weird and wonderful. It was an adaptation of James Joyce's Ulysses, so it was kind of very imagistic and crazy. And we were invited over, and oh, do you want me to speak in the mic?
Oh, you could just, I'll just turn it in your direction.
Project.
Yeah, just
project. Just, yeah. So I came, and when you come with a theatre company, you get put up on people's floors. There's no hotels and all that, right? You sleep on couches, and you take what you can get, kind of thing. And I was really lucky. I got put up on, I was in a house in, I guess now it would be Little Italy, Lippincott, at college in Bathurst in Toronto. And these great people just said, yeah, sure, make yourself at home. And I really got on with these people. And then we carried on our tour to Chicago and New York. Oh, thank you. And then I just really got on with the folks that I met in this. There was about 4 or 5 different apartments in this house, and I liked everybody. And then I came back again, and then sort of came back about 3 times, and then I met my wife, who's from Toronto. And so she was sort of a friend of one of the people in this house. And so we were married in '84, which made me legal, like a landed immigrant. And I started to do specific work in Toronto in '84, and I've stayed ever since and haven't had kids. And I've got some friends here who live just up the road from me. Yeah. Yeah. So and I've been Toronto-based, but I always make a point of going. I was in New York, Chicago, and Toronto. Which one did I choose? Toronto. And I say that with affection because really, in 1980, I was so excited by Toronto. I mean, I met some great people, which was obviously a big part of it. But for me, it was really exciting to be in a city that was kind of formulating its own identity and really growing, and that like music, theater, film was all kind of shifting and changing, and I felt very much a part of a new energy. And I met some great people in the theater, and I started to do mainly theater in the 80s. And then as a dad, you got to earn more money than just doing theater, so I started to do commercials, and I would do like weird commercials for the game Balderdash. Anybody remember that game? Remember that game? So I did that, and they were never like regular, look at this sexy man kind of thing. They were all like, that's weird. We'll get him to sell something strange, So I did those, but it was great because I would do those and then I'd do theater, and I just keep going, and then I drifted more and more and more into film, and a friend of mine, Bruce MacDonald, who is a filmmaker, an independent filmmaker, who is Toronto-based, I sort of started to do more stuff with him, and I started to do, and I sort of, as you can tell by me, I'm kind of theatrical, and I kind of, like I've had to learn how to tone down my performance and my energy to film and television. And it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it. But the kind of roles that I've done, you know, you say I've been in a lot of films. It's because I guess I'm a character actor. And as a character actor, you tend to be in a lot of different things, but not necessarily for a long time. So I'll be the guy that, oh, he's interesting. Oh, he's dead now. That kind of thing. So I do tend to do a lot of work. And you'll often see me, and people often say, you're that guy in, they can't name it because they recognize my face, because they've seen it about 3 times, being shot or killing somebody. So, but it's fun, I have no regrets.
Along those lines, because you said you're a theatrical person, but you're a character actor, how do you perform character actor roles without overtaking everything that's happening? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you have to be like, huh, okay.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because in a way, when you do, so let's say Supernatural, say, it's a show, and it's got a brand, right? You know, and it's the 2 boys, and Castiel, and like it's very specific, and it appeals to a very particular audience. So if I come in as a character actor, you're right, you know, I can't be like the big guy, look at me, everybody! I'm the flavor of the week. So you got to bring something that is a good color, like a primary color, that works, but it doesn't overtake everything else. You know, so you sort of you learn to do it. That's kind of how I figured it out. And sometimes it's successful, and sometimes it's not. Like, and I can honestly say with Supernatural, it was easy because Jared and Jensen are so cool and relaxed in who they are. They don't feel threatened by a character actor coming and stealing the show. Like, they play it for real, and they know that in the end it benefits them if it's somebody that's strong and has a strong scene with them. So a lot of my success as the character of Death has to do with the fact that Jensen played it so well with me. Like, he played it as an equal. He didn't play it like, well, I'm the star of the show, so this is my scene. He really played the whole idea in the pizza parlor of being terrified of him. And he really made me look good, but then I made him look good, you know what I mean? And he was very generous, and it sort of works. But I'm sure all of you know in different work situations that, like with egos and stuff, it doesn't always work that way, and you're struggling a little bit to try and either establish yourself or to figure the dynamic out. But Supernatural is an example where it's really easy. There's been other shows that you go in and you go, oh, okay, I'll keep quiet. And then there's other ones where it just doesn't feel right that you just tone it down a little bit. But it's always an adjustment. It's not like I have a secret formula. Everything's different. Everything, you okay there? Yeah. I'm being spontaneous. Yeah, so here's an example, where I like to, like, for me, you guys are the most important in the room because you're here. You're right here, and I'm a theatre actor, and you're my audience, and we're in the room together with the same energy. And I actually find it very difficult when there's 2 things, because you're having to...
Oh, like two audience, like the audience
yeah,
is
because
like I'm here.
having to respect the camera, and you're having to respect the camera and playing it there, and there's
I'm
doing all this
I'm
stuff. So it's very interesting, but I'm always aware of the dynamic in the room,
That must make dinner parties very interesting.
Although, so here's an interesting, my friends here, young actors, and they go to a youth club, and they youth theatre, and they do work. And I would say that as an actor, you don't always have to be the bigger thing in the room. I'm here, and I'm being given permission by you to be who I am. So it's kind of up to me to come in and do this and be the guy that's interesting and got a big personality. But that's why I like acting, is that I'm not like that really. I'm shy, and I actually I've always found it hard to, like if I was in a bar and there was like 10 people, I would be more interested in listening to the other 9 people than I would be going, hey, I've got this great story about this and that and the other. So I don't think to be an actor you have to kind of dominate and be the most interesting person in the dinner party. Actually, often actors listen and they're, and I'm a middle child. I have an older brother and a younger brother, and I'm very aware how different I am with like an older brother and a younger brother, and how like sometimes I suffer from not really even knowing who I am, because I'm an actor and I sort of put on a costume and then I go somewhere else. Wow, this is getting very deep. Okay. All right. Any other penetrating questions?
Lots of deep dives coming. I want to like put a pin in Supernatural because I know a lot of folks here will have questions specifically about that show for you, and I think we'll cycle back to that in a little bit. But I wanted to just ask. Well, honestly, this is a selfish question. Hardcore Logo is one of my favorite movies.
Right.
Yeah, it was the first time I saw you in anything. Like that's my primary association with you as Bucky Heath.
Yeah.
Have people seen Hardcore Logo here or familiar with the concept? Yeah. So Julian basically plays this reclusive rock star who and has a big mythology about him, and then the movie is a mockumentary about a fictional band kind of tour in Canada, and they are making this pilgrimage to Bucky Heath. They like worship Bucky Heath, and he's this very shadowy figure through the movie's whole narrative. Like they do a benefit concert for him, he may have cancer, no one knows what's going on, and so they go to Bucky Heath's estate and like find out what is actually going on with Bucky, and you do such a good job of like playing that character, who's enigmatic but yet not ultimately at the end. And I guess I wondered, how did you and Bruce McDonald was the director, and I'm wondering how did you two develop that character? Like how did you know what type of, I guess, rock star he was going to be?
Well, I did, for that one, so Bruce and I met basically on the streetcar in Toronto. He recognized me and I sort of went, oh hi, and then we did a film called The Top of His Head, which was a Peter Metler film, and Bruce was an editor. That's how he started off his career. And he edited that film, and then I started to, start to see each other regularly. And he said about Hardcore Logo, but he didn't quite know what the balance was going to be, didn't quite know who was going to play the lead singer, which was played by Hugh Dillon originally, eventually. But I guess what I would say is that so coming from England, my influences in the 70s were not necessarily theatre and film, they were rock and roll, right? So the big thing for me was punk in the mid-70s. So at the time, I mean, it was Joe Strummer, The Clash, the Sex Pistols, all the bands that were changing society, that was where the energy was, and I really was fascinated by it, and into that music, the Stranglers. There were just so many of them, and I kind of pitched him like if I was Joe Strummer meets Iggy Pop meets I don't know, all my heroes really, Shane MacGowan from the Pogues. There was like some, I don't know, and then it was me and my background, and so I just kind of went for my influences and played that. And it's one of the few films that I've actually done that. Most films you have to sort of construct the mythology of the writing, but because of the way Bruce works, he allowed me to be this hybrid of all the people that I wanted to be and fantasized about. And Fandom, like I guess is a fan.
Yeah. When you were in Toronto, this is a total sidebar, but when you came to Toronto in the 80s, did you get involved in Toronto's punk scene that was burgeoning at that time?
Not much, because it had kind of come and gone. By the 80s, the really hot scene was like 76, 77, 78. But I do have a funny story about it, and that was, I do a lot of films with first-time directors. I'll make a point of working at the Canadian Film Centre or at Ryerson, especially with young, emerging voices. I think it's really important to Canadian culture. Like, it's so important that we develop our own sensibility and our own stories. I did Cube with Vincenzo from the Film Centre, and there's been a few other shows that I've done. So one guy came up to me and he said, would you be in my film? I'm doing a short, and I'd love you to be in it. It's perfect for you. I love Hardcore Logo, and I think you played my dad in that film. And he said, yeah, my dad's Chris Haight. And Chris Haight was the guitarist for the Biotones, which was, and so his real name is Chris Paputz. And his son Key-Ray is an emergent.
Yeah, I know his movies, yeah.
And so he directed, so I said, wow, sure. So there was a kind of confluence of, Key-Ray was into the scene, and I learned about the Toronto punk scene retroactively, like through Key-Ray and through his dad, and through, but I wasn't really a part of it.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of the lot of the actor, to be honest with you. I think actors are more sort of like flies on the wall, and then if they're lucky, they get to portray some of those people that they watch. They're not necessarily the really amazing, fantastic people in the middle of an event or a movement.
I read in the past, in other interviews, probably something about Supernatural, where you've talked about being a British person in North America and doing, North American productions a lot in Toronto, that you sometimes had to modulate your Britishness or mediate it.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me sort of how that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see I have an accent. It's I've got grown-up Toronto kids, so. And they'll often go, Dad, you have to talk like that, tone it down. So I've learned to modulate my Britishness, I guess, over the years, and also because it wasn't cool to be British in the 80s and 90s in the Toronto art scene. Quite rightly, because hello, that's my agent. Scotiabank. I don't think I better answer it and say hello. It's one of those robocalls or something. We've got your PIN number. Or something. Sorry. So in the 80s, and I was mainly involved in theatre in the 80s, and it was about developing a Canadian voice, and even places like Stratford, the Stratford Festival. They didn't want British accents in there, they wanted Canadian accents. They wanted people to identify with it, which is really healthy. Like, I'm very happy with that. But at the same time, I can't deny who I am. I'm not going to sort of like put on a fake Canadian accent because it would sound terrible and it wouldn't look authentic. So I was kind of caught a little bit, but the way I look at it is that often I'll play a British guy within a Canadian context. Like we'll do it, if there's a historical show, often there are British figures in Canadian history, obviously. In more contemporary shows like Orphan Black, Toronto is shot as Toronto as it is now, which is as an international city. You don't kind of go, well, they don't sound very Canadian. It doesn't matter, like you're from all over the place, which is, again, really good. But I've also learned that, there are certain things that in my accent that as long as I put a lens on it, I don't, like, nothing screams, "Limey!" It's sort of like I've learned to put a filter on my accent. So I did a show in Chicago about 3 years ago called Patriot for Amazon, and I had to play a guy from Chicago, which was a challenge for me. And so I kind of like walked around, sticking my back in my throat, kind of trying it, and looking in the mirror and talking. And trying to like stop doing this, like British people speak like this, and American people can't. That's kind of like a really bad shorthand of an approach. So anyway, I try to find a different way of speaking and not go, call blimey and not doing sort of British things. But I figured it out, and it was interesting that the showrunner of that show, I didn't dare talk about my accent because I thought, what if he finds out that I'm British and he'll fire me, or keep it quiet, not speak like this.
Oh, so you kept the Chicago accent the whole time?
When I was talking to him in person, I would sort of use this mid-Atlantic kind of voice that I can do, and I can drop things.
Yeah.
So I would do that. then I said to once I built up the courage to say, nothing wrong with the accent, it's fine. Oh no, your accent's a part of who you are. And it's like, he's a quirky character. And he said, what is an American accent? And it was music to my ears, because often you hear this thing of like, well, you're supposed to talk like this, you're supposed to say your vowels like that. So that was really a pleasant surprise. And that I could survive in that environment as I am. But I can't complain. I mean, I'm a character. Like I'm very specific, so I don't fit into a mainstream sort of hybrid.
Hearing you sort of talk about that, I can see why you would have been cast in a movie like The Witch, because there's like, I feel like there's a seamless fit in your role at the beginning of the film. There's sort of this. And it's Puritan, so you can't understand what anyone's saying in that movie anyway. So it like worked through that, and I wanted to ask you about that specifically. Did you have a sense when you were doing it that it would be a big deal? I know people ask this question a lot about movies
No,
like that.
not really. I knew it was incredibly, like the meticulous attention paid to detail, which was really unusual for, like, I do a lot of independent films. In independent films, you'll notice that the wardrobe for my characters is pretty similar because it's mine. There's no money for wardrobe, so it's like, what can you wear that looks like the character? Well, I got a jacket at home, I can wear that. And honestly, that's often the thing. So as a result, it doesn't really look like it's a world of its own. It does look a bit secondhand and borrowed sometimes. This movie, The Witch, I was amazed. Like he was an absolute fanatic for detail. And right down to the wardrobe, I ended up, we shot a bunch of scenes that weren't used in the movie because they wanted to get out of the village and into the wild, which was really what the whole movie was about. But in order to do the other scenes in the village, I think all of them I was kind of sitting in a position of power. And I don't think you ever saw my feet, but they ordered my shoes to come from Italy, and homemade or handmade in Italy in the authentic way that they would have been done back in the year. Now, how he got the money to do that, I don't know. Whether he was putting favors, or what, but he had that meticulous attention to detail. And that shows in the film. And we shot it in Mattawa, Ontario, which he researched had an infrastructure of forestry that was very similar to the way that the Puritans originally came. So even the trees were important to him. You know, I look at a tree is a tree to me, but not to him. He was very, very particular about everything. So I was a very particular element, and he wanted authentic British too. Like, there was no way that you could have been a Canadian putting on like a good British accent, which most Canadians can do, but he was really stickler.
So he really wanted your British accent.
He really wanted it.
Yeah.
And there was an interesting thing recently. Oh, I can tell you about this. I've done a film about David Bowie, which I'm very excited about. And it's not a jukebox musical. It's not like, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody or like his greatest hits. It's actually about the years before David Bowie became Ziggy Stardust. So it's his struggling years. And his brother is struggling with mental illness, and he doesn't know how he's going to make it, who he is, whether he's doing pop songs or kids songs or what. So it's really good. I think it's a really good premise. Anyway, it was interesting that the casting director, the director of the film, cast particular people because, and he came up with the idea that there are faces that are British. I never thought about it like that, and I never I don't look at a face and go, oh, that's a Ukrainian face. And it's a bit of a weird thing to say, but anyway, to me, or to him, I had a Britishness about whatever that was. There you go.
That movie sounds great.
Yeah, I think it will be fun. It will be fun, and there's a musician called Johnny Flynn who plays Bowie, and Johnny Flynn is actually a really good musician in his own right. He has his own band in the UK, and I think he does a really good job. So
And do you play, are you allowed to say what?
Yeah,
what you play in the film?
I play his manager, Tony DeFries.
Oh crap, that's amazing.
Who is, and Tony DeFries was one of those, they called him DeFries. He was like one of those managers that was pretty significant.
Yeah.
Although in this story, this is not the manager's story, you know, I'm a colour
Yes.
within the story, but it's more about him, Bowie coming to America and trying to understand what America was all about.
Mm.
And then going back and then coming up with the idea of Ziggy. Yeah.
Just a minute here. Sort of going back to, you know, you were saying you work with indie directors as much as you work on bigger productions, and I know you've worked with a lot of indie horror folks, like the people from Black Fawn,
Yeah.
with Ejecta and Septic Man, which I loved but also hated watching. It was such like
Gross.
physically so
Gross,
gross. They really went
Right,
for it. Have you
yeah.
guys seen that movie? It's just disgusting. It's like toilets and living in a sewer and like just a total body horror nightmare.
Yeah.
I'm very proud it's Canadian. A fine tradition of body horror in Canada.
I think when, on the title and like the subtitle, shit happens.
Yeah. Never good enough. And I wanted to ask, you have such a unique vantage point because of your flexibility and your willingness to do, you know, different types of genre roles,
Yeah.
different budgets, and yeah, as you said, different levels of attention to detail. And I wonder from your vantage point, you know, the horror genre has changed quite a bit, and you know, there's more movies, I think, looking to movies like The Witch, you know, being sort of, I hate using this term, and I will probably use it again today, but elevated horror, like sort of a horror art film type of thing.
Okay, yeah.
And I wonder, sort of from your vantage point, not asking you to make a grand sweeping statement, but
Right.
the state of the genre as you're seeing it from the projects you're working on, do you see it changing from what it was before, like in the 80s or the 90s, or do you feel like there's a turn happening at all?
I think the spirit is the same,
Yeah.
right? Like the spirit of horror is fantastic because it's like, I don't know, there's an honesty about horror. It's more about our fears and the flip side of those perfect stories that we see presented to us all the time. It's what happens if something went wrong, or those characters messed up, or somebody got in a terrible position. It's our fears. And I think that's something we all identify with, and we all identify with being vulnerable. So there's a kind of a weird democracy about horror films. It's kind of people are pretty, or if there are pretty people, they're threatened by the sociopaths and the ugly people and the strange people and the you know, whatever. So I love that. I think that's very important. So the spirit is still there. It's taken a bunch of different turns. It's gone into all kinds of stuff. And then, like at one point it was torture porn, and like, you know, there's some stuff where I go, oh, I can't watch that. I don't know why people are doing that.
You were in a Sauna movie, right?
Yeah, it was. My death was considered to be too gruesome for the franchise at one point. They did a death for me in a glass cabinet or something. It was pretty awful, but it didn't seem particularly odd. I mean, I've done a few strange things, and I've worked with special effects and makeup a lot. And my character was one of those where I think mine was Saw 3, and they had like a storyboard, and they'd have like, this character is going to go here, and like it was flexible as to how it was going to go. And then they decided that mine would meet a grisly end quickly, as opposed to what they were setting me up for. They needed to go in some other direction. And then they gave me this really grisly death, but my grisly death was never seen.
What was the death?
Well, I got cut to pieces, I think.
Oh my god.
I think. Okay, it's
I mean,
Did I die in that one? Yeah, no, and they didn't use it. And there was, you know, there's always different reasons. Somebody doesn't like that, or we've already got one impact point in the movie, we don't need that one, and that guy's not any longer important enough to merit a sticky end. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these decisions going on. But I like that. I got to say, I like that about horror films. And there's like I said, there's a kind of democracy about it in that you go on set, you leave your ego behind. It's not about, you know, what a great actor you are. It's about making a gag work. It's about rhythm. It's like, okay, so we at the end of this scene, we're suddenly going to get a big jump or a big scare. You can't be chewing the scenery for the first half of that scene because it detracts from really where the scene is going to. So you're in collaboration with all the technical artists, all the special effects, sound, makeup, and you have to make this thing work. And I really enjoy it. I have two brothers that are designers, so I understand the technical side of things, and I like the idea that if you move to the light there, it's going to be much more frightening than if you act your heart out, but you act it over here, but if it's there, it's like, that's kind of fun. It's the opposite of theatre, but I like film as a technical medium too, so it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me being under prosthetics for 4 hours, listening to a special effects team talking for 2 hours about the guy getting his finger shot off in Taxi Driver. Like, they'll go on at length about stuff that actors never do. It's like real technical jargon. It's fascinating for me. So I like that. I like that part of it. So anyway, long-winded answer, but so the spirit is the same, but I think technology has changed to the point where it's easier to make horror films. There's more out there. So it's not surprising to me that there are some horror films that are distinguishing themselves by saying, we're more serious, we're more artistic, we're more, what was the term you used? Something horror?
Oh, elevated.
Elevated, like in terms of like we're taking ourselves very seriously, we have more money,
Yes.
we're going to make it more operatic.
Yes.
But I like the DIY stuff, the George Romero, and like there are so many examples.
What was it like working with George Romero on his last, Dead film?
A lot of fun. I mean, he's so relaxed,
Yeah.
so enjoyable to work with, and obviously you work under the legends, so everybody's very referential to him. But he was just really a lovely man, and loved what he was doing. And simple thing like, so there was one scene. And it was a very low budget film. There was one scene where I was part of a gang of people that were breaking into a house because we thought that there might be zombie children on the second floor. And we were going in there as a sort of vigilante group. So the scene starts with a picture of a boot kicking the door in. And it's all going into the house and they're running up the stairs and finding zombie children upstairs. And, we were already behind schedule and it's the afternoon and the producers said, we've got 5 scenes to shoot yet, and time's getting on. And somehow the door that we were supposed to kick in, it wasn't finished, it didn't look right. We tried it one time and the door fell down in the wrong way and people were getting upset and mad, and there were people like yelling, carpenters were yelling, producers were yelling, George is just sitting there and goes, okay guys, I got an idea. Forget the door, let's start the scene inside and we'll hear the door be smashed in off camera. And he said, because what's the scene about? It's not about the door being kicked in, it's about the time that you go up the stairs and you see the zombie children, that's the shock. So he was able to detach his ego and he was not saying, but I need this door, it's going to make my scene. He was able to say, scheme of things, what can we do?
Yeah.
So, I love that about him, and he was never sort of standing on his reputation. It's not one of his greatest films. I think many people would be the first to say that, but not the first to say that. I mean, but it was just a pleasure to be involved with it.
I think this will be my last question, and then we'll turn it over to the folks that are here to see if they've got any questions for you. But you sort of alluded before, you've done a lot of strange things, and I have no doubt that you have, and I think you've seen some of them. Is there any recent strange things you have to do that stick out in your mind, where you're just sort of in the middle of it, and you're like, what job is this? What am I doing?
It happens a lot, really.
Yeah.
I think the funniest, strangest one was I was in a back in the day when it used to be MOWs, Movies of the Week, before we used to get like mini-series and stuff, Toronto was a big centre for Movies of the Week, kind of low-budget features, right, that were shown on TV. And I can't remember what the name of the outfit is. They're from Atlanta, and they do a bunch of movies. 2 American names and then a bunch of Canadian actors. And so I did one called The Time Shifters. And it was actually a really cool concept where this guy was seen in a series of disasters, like the Hindenburg disaster, and way back, like as long as there's recorded footage, there's always this guy with a bowler hat at a disaster. And then our heroes begin to realize, who is this guy? Is he an architect of disasters? Where does he come from? Does he come from outer space? What's going on? So it eventually turns out that this guy is a tourist from the future, and he's a disaster tourist. He's paying money to come to any disasters that happen on Earth. And then he goes back to the future. That's me. I play that guy. And so there's a great scene in the movie where our hero is on a plane, and then he looks across, and there's me sitting there with the bowler hat, and then he looks and he goes, "There's going to be the plane's going to go down. The plane, like, what's going to happen?" And then he alerts it. He tries to tell everybody, and everybody thinks he's mad. And then they try and sort of capture him and tie him down. But indeed, the plane starts to go down. So it's pretty terrifying, pretty great idea. Anyway, you can imagine that after that, there were a few incidents when I would be on a plane. Oh my God, it's him! and I would actually then immediately go, the plane's not going down. It's okay. You know, it's sensitive, right? It's like it's a sensitive subject.
Oh yeah.
So that was one of the ones where I thought, oh, this is strange, and it's kind of, it's creepy. There is something very creepy about that. And there are funny ones too. It's fun being in a show like Supernatural that has such a wide fan base, and people would just, you know, like in Toronto, a lot of people go, "Hey, Death, how you doing?" Like, you know, like it's very funny. So, but I got to say, you know, I said about horror, the technology has changed. So has fandom, and so has events like this where fans really are a part of horror culture now, and that's a fun thing for me. It's a fun thing that people will engage in a conversation, and people are very respectful, and sometimes people are shy, but I feel people are enabled access to people that they see on the screen because of social media, because of fan conventions. We're on the same level, we're in the same room, we're talking. It's not like, you know, Sir Julian Richings will appear at a certain time. You know, it's like, I like that. I think that, which, you know, again, comes to like, it's fun being in a room with you guys. Not on camera. So but it's real. It's sort of, you know, it's a real thing. It's fun.
Does anyone have any questions for Julian?
Don't be shy.
Any supernatural questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a Hollywood question. Oh, your scene in Supernatural Parody 2, did you have a play in how it was created? Because I've noticed that they really do their research.
What they do.
But I can't find anything leading up to your scene. The only thing I can grasp is decibel of food.
Yeah. So do you guys know what we're talking about here? It's supernatural parody. It's a phenomenon. Again, this is part of technology. It's something that's completely new to me. But so there are these 2 sisters that do these parodies of very well-known shows, meticulously researched and generally put to music. Right? They asked me to be on it, and they said, "Would you come and make an appearance?" Sure! You know, fly me down to Vegas, and, which is what, because they're Las Vegas based, and they said, "Well, we're going to do this, this, and this. Would you make an appearance?" Sure. I didn't know what I was going to be doing, but I was just literally a snapshot within the song. But for me, that's fun. I'm happy to do that kind of stuff.
They went back that far.
Yeah, no.
It's incredible the research that they do.
And it's incredible the knowledge base that fan culture has about actors. You know, I can't believe people will come up to me, and I'm really proud that they do. You know, I'm in a lot of Supernatural, a lot of American money in there, but people will also come up to me and do stuff like, and say, the name has escaped me now. What's Amber Marshall in the horse show that shot in Calgary, prime time?
Julian, Homeland.
Homeland, thank you. Heartland.
I was like,
Good.
Homeland, I think.
Heartland. So somebody will come up and go, Heartland, I loved you in Heartland. I go, really? That's fantastic. I was in 2 episodes as a guest because it's a Canadian show and they want Canadian actors in it. And I think, wow, that's great that there is that knowledge and that fan base out there. And I'm kind of proud to be a Canadian actor. Sometimes I'm Canadian content where we've got to find a Canadian actor to put it here somewhere. And I know that I am, but yeah, hey, I'll do that. But there are other times when I go, wow, this is great. I'm part of something.
Any other questions?
2 questions. So the David Bowie movie, can you say the name of the movie?
I can't say too much about it,
Okay.
but it's Stardust, as far as I know.
Okay, because my
As in
brother's a
Ziggy,
huge
right?
fan of David Bowie, so in fact he wanted to know.
Yeah, and I don't know where it is in production
Okay.
or what the right, but it's okay to say that
Yeah.
I'm in it.
Yeah, so I'll keep it.
And if you look it up, I think you'll probably find information about it. That there's been some contention about rights, because the David Bowie estate is very difficult to get music rights for. And so you might find stuff about it sort of obliquely through that. Yeah.
My second question. So you played Death so well? Like, what was your, like, did you have any reference that you went for that role? Because I know, like, Jensen, like you said, you acted well together, but
Yeah.
just the first scene that you see you, you're like, oh God, this
Yeah.
guy is something.
Well, it was a great montage, right?
Exactly.
That's an amazing montage. So it's like a rock video. I mean, that soundtrack and the guy falling over. When I did it, I had no idea it would end up looking like that. I thought, oh, this could be good, but I had no idea it would be that effective. So right away, it's great because I'm given this massive intro.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm given significance like that. But, you know, in terms of my choices, I'm a good actor in that I'm aware of a script and the demands of a script, right? And that I can kind of figure things out and I can do my own homework. And the clues that they gave me in the script were really good, and they were that this guy eats pizza and likes pizza, but he's like the most powerful person in the world, which is a lovely contradiction for an actor to play, right? Rather than just I'm the most powerful man in the world. Like, so right away I was given permission not to play it on one note, but to play counterpoints. So to be very relaxed and to go, "Would you like some more?" You know, it's much more intimidating
Exactly.
than if you go, have some more, because I'm strong and powerful.
Yeah.
So it gave me permission to do that. And then I realized when I look back on it, I grew up when I was a kid, in the 60s, I watched Hammer Horror a lot, right? And I didn't ever do it consciously, but who was in Hammer Horror? Like Peter Cushing, and then Peter Lorre, Christopher Lee, and so many of those guys. They're my influences. And I realized that, you know, there's an aristocratic British elegance about it that I'm clearly channeled. I didn't ever consciously do it, but it's coming from that kind of era, right? And again, I was given permission to be different. Like, I have to look like I don't belong in the world of Chicago and the boys. That it's okay to look like you're from outside or from a different class. Yeah. Yeah.
Who would you say is your favorite character in Supernatural?
Well, they're a bit. So I like some of the sort of character actors because I identify with that, right? So I like people like Kevin Tran. Yeah, he's great, and Osric is a lovely guy. So I I almost find it hard to distinguish between the two. Like, so he's a lot of fun. But the two boys are great. I really, I mean, it's very unusual that you can watch a show for 15 seasons and still be interested in them, and them not just become a caricature of themselves. You know what I mean by caricature, right? Like where you can predict everything that they're going to do every time that they, like you've got certain expectations, and you think that's great, that's the way that he did that, I knew that he would do that, but they will also surprise you, and they'll also, and their character arcs, you know, what we sort of say is an arc where if you start in one place and you get to another place by the end of the episode, their arcs are sometimes surprising, and they betray each other. And what I like about both of those characters is that they fail. And that to me is like a human quality that we all have, and that's, again, what I like about horror, is that it's about failures and fears. It's not just about being perfect, right? So I like the two brothers for that, in that they're messing up. They're always messing up, and particularly in relation with, like my character, they're messing up all the time, right to the point where they kill me. Yeah.
I was the photographer for the Headstones. How was it like working with you? With you.
The what, with the Headstones?
I was the photographer.
Yeah?
Yeah, my dad took me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's also a photographer too.
Cool. All right. And what was it like for me working with them?
Yes.
With the band?
Hugh Dillon.
With Hugh?
Yeah.
So Hugh Dillon, who is the lead in Harco Logo, gives the movie an awful lot of authenticity, because he really was, for many years, the lead in a band called the Headstones, which was kind of like the hip in a way, in that they were a truly Canadian band that would tour and tour and tour. I thought, so I never worked with the band, I just worked with Hugh, and he was fantastic. And very respectful, also very humble in that he knew that he was a rock and roller and not an actor, and he knew that I was an actor, and would sort of ask me questions, and I would go, oh, you don't need to ask me questions, but he wanted to get stuff right, right? I thought he was brilliant, and Hugh Dillon is responsible for the ending of Harco Logo.
He came up with that.
He came up with that. That was
Yeah.
not scripted. He said this is the only way it can end, and Harco Logo does have a remarkable ending,
Yeah.
and that's Hugh, because Hugh was a rock and roll guy, and he said, if this guy's going to go on this journey, and he's going to go through all these different things, there's only one way that this story can end. And he convinced Bruce, the director, that to change it and to just shoot it. And he didn't tell anybody before he did what he did right at the end, so it was like everybody was completely shocked.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a real, it was one of those moments. So I mean, I guess the short answer to that is that they were great. They were really good. And it's fun for me as an actor when I work with people from different disciplines, like from music, dancers, visual artists. I really like that when I work. So that they're trying to do the same thing but with a slightly different language. It's a lot of fun.
One more, and then I think we'll be wrapping it up.
So I know that Jensen and Jared tend to play pranks on a lot of cast members entering into
Yeah.
Supernatural. Did they ever play any pranks on you?
They didn't dare.
Oh.
That's what I tell to people. Lots of people ask me that, you know. And I go, oh, really? And then I've looked up and, yeah, sure enough, there are pranks. But the thing that I say about those guys is that they're relaxed, they're in control, they're the 1 and 2 in the show, right? So they affect the way the show runs. And they're very easy and relaxed, but they keep it that way. Like, that's deliberate, so not get things too intense. So I can understand, they bring a mischief to work, which is really good, keeps people on their toes. But they're professional. And if there's a scene that's very complicated,